Hi, Dr. John Torres here on this Facebook Live. We call it the Daily Doc series. It's actually a couple times a week. But what I do is I talk about the headlines that you've probably heard over the past few days, get some information behind those headlines so you have a good understanding of what that means, and particularly what it means for you as far as trying to get through this pandemic sooner rather than later and as helpfully as possible. My goal here is to give you information you can go away with that can help you, your family, your loved ones, your community, again, get through this pandemic sooner rather than later, and then answer your questions. You always have great questions, so please send them our way. I'll get to as many of those as I can. But let me start with the headlines. The first one, if you heard last night, President Biden gave a talk about the current state of the pandemic and where we're going from here, and he made some interesting announcements during that talk. The first one he made is that starting May 1st, he's going to mandate that all states open up their vaccine eligibility to anybody 18 and above. So all adults in the country starting May 1st will be eligible to get the vaccines. But he was also very specific to make sure that people understood that doesn't mean by May 1st that everybody can get a vaccine. It means by May 1st that they can get the vaccine and start signing up for it. They can start signing up for the vaccine and they become eligible at that point. As of now, as everybody knows, states have varied how they're making the eligibility opening up for the vaccine. Some states are doing it by age, other states are doing it by medical conditions, by occupation, combination of all those factors, and it varies from state to state. So it has been a bit confusing for people. And what he wants to do is saying May 1st, go ahead and open up to everybody 18 and above. And he also mentioned that by the end of May, we should have enough vaccines to vaccinate every adult in this country. And so you can see there's a little bit of time discrepancy there, but the thinking is that by May 1st, people can sign up, probably won't get an appointment for 4 weeks or so, and then they'll get the vaccine by the time there's enough vaccines for everybody. So this is great news, but again, the one caveat being that on May 1st doesn't mean you're going to have a shot on May 1st. It means you might be eligible for a shot on May 1st. And then you can start looking for where to get the shot and where to get the appointment. To help with that, the other thing he talked about is setting up a system where the government is going to start a computerized system where they're going to say, you can come here, you can look for appointments, you can look for vaccine availability in your area, and make it essentially one place you can go to get that information. As of right now, if you wanted to go ahead and do the similar thing, at NBC, we actually came up with a website that does this, planyourvaccine.com. At planyourvaccine.com, you can do similar type things. Plus, you can put an email in there and they will alert you when requirements or when the eligibility changes in your area, particularly in your state. And that way you don't have to keep looking for those changes in eligibility. They'll let you know. And on this website, again, planyourvaccine.com, they look at a variety of things. They look at public health departments and what they're tweeting out, what they're putting out on social media. They're looking at governors' press conferences. They're looking at a variety of different things on a constant basis to see when things change. When they do, they'll go ahead and put the changes into that planyourvaccine.com, and they'll notify you if you have set up your email. On top of that, you can do the same thing for friends or loved ones in other states and get notified about their state as well. For instance, if you have an elderly parent somewhere and you want to help them, try and find the vaccine and get vaccinated. But again, the one headline from last night's press conference with President Biden, by May 1st, every American 18 and above will be eligible for a vaccine and can at least start signing up at that point. The other thing he said is that he is hoping that by July 4th, and again, he said this is a hope, this is a goal, by July 4th that we can get together in our backyards in small groups, emphasizing the small groups part, to celebrate the 4th of July. Backyard picnics, those types of situations, trying to get back to some level of normalcy, trying to get us back to where we say, okay, now we know the vaccine is helping us, we can do a few more things because of the vaccine, and encourage more people to get the vaccine at that point. And so again, looking at those two factors, one of them is people starting to get vaccinated, pretty much everybody eligible by the 1st of May, and hopefully people get vaccinated by the end of May or June timeframe. And then by the 4th of July, enough people are vaccinated that we can start going ahead and going to the backyards and doing these small group get-togethers. The barbecues we've had in the past, the 4th of July picnics we've had in the past, those types of celebrations. But again, small groups, not large groups, not outdoor events, not the firecracker display or the fireworks displays that we've gone to for years and years. That'll still be a little bit incoming, but at least this is an opening to get back to those types of situations. The other thing is that we have found out that, and he said this in his briefing last night, that the CDC is going to be coming out with more information on things we can do with the vaccine. In particular, it looks like the CDC is going to look at travel, how the vaccine can change travel and what you can do if you're vaccinated, workplace, what you can do in your workplace if you're vaccinated versus if you're not vaccinated, and even places of worship. They're going to address those situations. They said over the next days to weeks. My guess is probably going to be more over the weeks because they want to make sure they get it solid down with scientific data and information you can use instead of just general information you can use. And so that is the press briefing that President Biden had last night. And so that's good news. And it's good news in the fact that it's telling us that, one, the vaccines seem to be working. The numbers are plateauing. They're not coming down quite as much as we'd like, but they're getting there. And so, and that's why he said for the 4th of July, the goal is to be able to do that, because he also acknowledged that this thing could turn around and all of a sudden start going into another surge, the fourth surge as they're starting to call it. We're hoping it doesn't get to that. We're hoping it keeps continuing down, but time will tell where we are with that. So that's the one news. The other news, the vaccine itself and how well it does at protecting us. Well, Pfizer actually did something very interesting. A while back when they first came out with the vaccine, or before they actually came out with the vaccine, they made a deal with Israel. And they said, we will supply you with vaccine on the condition that you give us data from the people who get vaccinated and those not vaccinated. You give us data on your citizens so we can understand how the vaccine is working in a natural environment. And they have had that cooperation since the pandemic, middle of the pandemic. And now we're starting to get that data. And here's where we are in Israel. In Israel, over half the people are vaccinated with at least one vaccine. Almost half are vaccinated with 2 vaccines. And as you go up in ages, above the age of 65, or possibly 70, 84% of people are vaccinated. So a huge amount of people are vaccinated. And so we're starting to see what that means. And what we've seen over the past few weeks is cases are dropping. The ability to get infected from COVID seems to be dropping as well. And they just came out with new information in a new study. And what they found, if you remember, these shots are talked about being 95% effective at preventing COVID. That means preventing the disease, not necessarily preventing you from getting the virus, but preventing the disease from happening, whether you get the virus or not. And so around 95% effective. Well, in the real world, what we found here in Israel, what they have found is that it's 97% effective at preventing COVID, at preventing that disease. Not 95, but 97% effective. On top of that, when they were doing this, 80% of the cases were the UK variant, the B.1.1.7 variant. And so now we know from this data that it works well against this variant, at least in this situation. But the other thing that's probably even more important is they have suggestions from this study that it actually stops asymptomatic spread. Why that's important? Because again, what we've known up until now is the COVID vaccine protects you from getting the disease. It protects you that if the virus gets in your body from developing the COVID disease, which is what causes the issues and the possible long-term implications. But what we didn't know is, does it prevent you from having the virus in your body? Or if it does get in there, does it prevent you from building up the virus enough to where you spread it to other people? And it looks like it does, because they found out, at least the suggestion from the data we have there, is that it is 94% effective at preventing that asymptomatic infection of the virus. In other words, the virus getting in your body and you not knowing you have it, but being able to spread it to other people. 94% effective at preventing that, which is a lot higher than we thought it would be. And so that's great news. And if that holds out with other studies, particularly around the world, that's going to be important, because that's what we need to make sure we get this pandemic under control. Not just preventing me from getting COVID, but preventing me from spreading it to other people as well, the coronavirus. And that's what's going to stop this pandemic in its tracks. And so hopefully this information holds out in other studies and the data is consistent. Now, the one thing they did say is they weren't able to study a South African variant because there wasn't enough in the population, but it looks like it's handling the South African variant at least to a bit of a degree. We don't know what it's doing with the transmission of the South African variant, but there's no reason to believe it won't do that as well. And so again, looking at this is great information for the vaccine. No reason to think that the other vaccines won't follow suit and have similar type things. They just didn't have this agreement with Israel, so they don't have this robust data. But that's good news, because it's showing that these vaccines are working not just for preventing you from getting it, but possibly also preventing you from transmitting it to others. Once we find that out, then we'll be able to pull back more on these mask mandates, pull back more on these social distancing mandates. But for now, again, the 4 W's I always talk about. Wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance, and open a window. Ventilate as best you can. Best tools to protect us as well as the vaccine, the things we can do to help ourselves, our family, our loved ones, and our community. And then the last one I want to talk about is what's happening around the world. Like I mentioned, here in the U.S., the cases are plateauing. We seem to have them at least under control from going up and into that fourth surge, although now that states have started to open up, with some states completely opening up, the concern is over the next 2 to 4 weeks, we'll start seeing them surge up again and give us that fourth surge. But for now, things at least have plateaued. They haven't dropped down like we want them to, and hopefully they will. And by that, I mean get down to 10,000 cases a day or less. Right now, we're still in the 50 to 60,000 case a day range. But I think we're going to get there. But when you look at the numbers here in the U.S., just to go over the numbers, 29 million since the beginning of the pandemic. And for those who didn't know about yesterday, yesterday was the day a year ago that the World Health Organization declared this pandemic official. It was an official pandemic across the world. That was March 11th, 2020. Now we're March 12th, 2021. In that year, 29 million deaths, or 29 million cases here in the U.S., 530,000, almost 531,000 deaths here in the U.S. attributed to coronavirus and COVID cases. And so those are numbers, I think, a lot higher than most of us thought would be at this point. But we also didn't expect those 3 waves of spikes to occur throughout the year. We thought we'd have it better under control by now. But we're getting there. We're making strides. Other countries are having issues right now, and that's what concerns us here, that we might as well. Part of the reason is because they've opened up. Germany is saying they're expecting their 3rd wave. And so they've had a couple waves in the past, some of those small. They expect this 3rd wave, and they're starting to see cases crop up a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And looking at the numbers here for Germany, right now they are looking at, right here, around 6 per 100,000 cases a day. If you look at a 3-day average, it's around 14 per 100,000. So it's much higher. It seems to be hopefully controlling a little bit. But what they're doing is looking at how do we prevent that 3rd wave from happening. They didn't have the extra wave like we did. Italy is talking about shutting down, particularly over the Easter weekend, which is that April 3rd to 5th time frame of completely shutting the country down. And the reason they're doing that, if you look at their one-day trend, per 100,000, 42 people per 100,000. Those are huge numbers. So again, these are the types of things that we're starting to see in other parts of the world. These cases crop up, cases go down, and then surges happen again. The concern is, will that happen here as well? It does rely on a certain extent, on a huge extent, to human behavior. And again, the 4 W's: wear a mask, watch your distance, wash your hands, and open windows to ventilate, avoid large groups. As the CDC said, avoid unnecessary travel, but they're also going to come out with travel recommendations if you've been vaccinated. We'll see what happens there. But again, going over the headlines, number one, what President Biden talked about last night, that by May 1st, 18 and above across the country will be eligible for the shot and can start signing up at that point. Not necessarily get the vaccine by May 1st, but sign up. By the end of May, they expect to have enough vaccines for every person here to get fully vaccinated. By July 4th, they're hoping that we can have those backyard get-togethers with small groups with vaccinated people, and we can have the fun we typically have over the 4th of July weekend that we didn't end up having last year because of the pandemic. We also talked about the Pfizer vaccine and how in Israel it's showing not just a great effectiveness at preventing you from getting COVID, 97%, but also great effectiveness at preventing you from unknowingly spreading it. 94% effective at preventing you from having asymptomatic infection of COVID. And then we talked about Germany and Italy, how they're starting to look at closing things down because they're starting to see a surge in cases. We could see that replicated here if we don't keep things under control. And by that, I mean get vaccinated and wear a mask, social distance, all those things. But now let me see if you have any questions. Oh, and the one thing I do want to mention before I forget, this weekend is daylight savings time. So don't forget to go ahead and set your clock forward on Saturday. This is the one that none of us like. The weekend none of us like because we lose an hour of sleep. Monday, I'm going to talk about what you can do when you're starting to not feel so good because you haven't slept that well over the weekend because of that 1 hour time change, which doesn't seem like much, but is actually a very big deal for our bodies. And at the end of this, I'll give you some tips on what to do for daylight saving time. So let me see if you have questions.
When will children be vaccinated? Are there CDC guidelines on child vaccination?
So the question is about children getting vaccinated and CDC guidelines. Right now, children 16 and above can get vaccinated with one of the vaccines. The other ones no, but one of the vaccines. But the mandate that President Biden has put out there for 18 and above, 16 and above can get it. They might not be initially eligible, but they will at some point. Right now, all the manufacturers are doing studies on children. And the way they're going to do this is they're going to do it from 12 to 17-year-olds. So they basically want to look at that older age group of children for a couple reasons. One, because they work their way down in ages as they go through the trials, as time goes on, to make sure it's safe in every age group. As they go lower in ages, they get different responses because the immune system reacts a little bit differently. Their side effect profile might be a little bit different, and just the children's physiology is different, more so as they get younger and younger. So they're going to group it up. 12 to 17-year-olds are going to be the first salvo, and they think they'll have those studies done enough to get them with enough time to get them inoculated or vaccinated by summertime, so when they go back to school they're vaccinated. Then they'll do 5 to 11-year-olds, and then they'll do 1 to 5-year-olds, and they'll work their way down. The thinking is those 1 to 5-year-olds and potentially those 5 to 11-year-olds will be able to get their shots in the wintertime, beginning of the winter, maybe early next year. But again, everybody else getting vaccinated, especially the adults, that's what we can do to protect the children as well. And so it's happening. It's just happening a bit slowly. They want to make sure that it's safe.
After I'm vaccinated, do I have to wear a mask?
So the question is, after I'm vaccinated, do I have to wear a mask? This is a great question. And it depends on what you're doing. So if you're vaccinated and you're hanging out in your house with other people that are vaccinated, so let's say you bring your neighbors over, or you bring your sister over with her husband, or a situation like that where it's a few people getting together who are all fully vaccinated in a private setting, then no, you don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to social distance. You can hug, you can take your masks off, you can have a dinner, you can have all sorts of things. The other thing the CDC said is scenario number 2. If you're fully vaccinated, let's say you and whoever you live with are fully vaccinated, they can bring another family in who's not vaccinated if they're from a single household, and they don't have to mask or social distance. But they have to make sure that it's from a single household. They're bringing them in. They're not getting multiple households together that are not vaccinated. In that case, you don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to social distance. And so these are great advances we're making here. These are great opening ups, but they are baby steps. And like I said, the CDC is going to give us more information. The one caveat they did say is anytime you're outside of that environment. So if you go out and about, if you go to a store, if you go to any kind of event or anything, if you're traveling, especially if you're public transportation, you need to wear a mask. You need to social distance as best you can, even if you're vaccinated, because again, even though in that Israeli study we're finding out that it looks like it's cutting down on the spread, we still don't know for sure. We need more robust studies and more robust data, and hopefully we get that over the next month or so and we get a better idea of what we can do. But for now, that's what the CDC recommends.
Will there be boosters for the vaccinations? If I had a reaction to the second vaccine shot, can I still get a booster?
So will there be boosters to the vaccinations? And if I had a reaction to the second shot, will there still be boosters? Yes, there will be boosters. Or can I still get a booster? Yes, there will be boosters. What we don't know is how often we're going to need those boosters. And that's going to depend on a couple of things. That's going to depend on the variants that are out there and what those variants do as far as how dominant they become, and how they treat the vaccine. In other words, are they able to get around the vaccine and they need to create a new vaccine or change it so that way it can attack these viruses as well, the variant viruses. But it's going to depend again on how much these variants spread. And that depends on us, because the less often we catch the virus, the less often the variants are going to spread or change. But it also depends on what the vaccine itself does over time. So what they're going to do is they'll keep an eye on the vaccine and how well it keeps protection going. They'll keep an eye on the variants and how they do in the environment. And if those things change to a certain degree, then they'll say it's time for a booster. By all estimates, we will need a booster, but right now the estimates are anywhere from 3 to 5 years all the way down to every year, kind of like the flu shot. And it's just going to depend. We won't know until time goes on, because we have to watch what happens in the real world environment as time goes on, particularly with our immune systems and how they handle the viruses. But we'll know eventually at what point to get that. Now, the other part of the question is, if I reacted to this vaccine and had a bad reaction to the second shot, can I still get the booster? Yes. It depends on what your reaction was. If it was an anaphylactic reaction, which is a life-threatening reaction, you end up usually in the hospital for that, then no, you shouldn't take it again, at least the same one from the same manufacturer. If, on the other hand, you just felt bad for a day, you were in bed maybe, sore arm, low-grade fevers, muscle aches, those types of side effects that we know can happen with this or any vaccine, then yes, you could still get the other vaccine, with the understanding that you're probably going to have those same types of issues again, but it shouldn't preclude you from getting it. So, yeah.
Should people take time off after getting their second shot of Pfizer, Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson first shot?
So should people take time off after getting their shot? It depends on you and your reaction. I had the shot, didn't react much at all. Other people have had the shot and they've been in bed for a whole day. It depends on you and how you react to these vaccines. But what the advice is, and we do know that with the second shot, this Pfizer, Moderna, with the second dose, you tend to react more than you do with the first dose. And with Johnson & Johnson, since it's a one-dose vaccine, it could be that type of reaction with that one dose, that it could be a reaction that puts you in bed for the day, you're not feeling very well, you're under the weather. And so a lot of advice is let them know at work that you're getting a vaccine, let's say on Wednesday. You might not feel too well on Thursday, and you might have to take the day off. That way they're forewarned. But understand that you might have to do that. The good thing about these side effects is they tend to recover very quickly. People get them, they recover in a day. And using my scenario, you get the shot on Wednesday, you feel bad Thursday, Friday you're feeling much better, and you can usually go back to work then. So it's something to think about doing, but it's not necessarily something that you have to do. Again, just let your work know I might not be there, and see what happens once you get the vaccine. But again, the important part is getting that vaccine for a couple reasons, and those are some of the headlines I'm talking about. President Biden, in his speech last night, said, by May 1st, 18-year-olds and above will be eligible for the vaccine. By July 4th, the goal is to be able to let people have backyard parties like they did in the past with other vaccinated people, and we can celebrate the 4th of July. But understand that it depends on where we go with the cases, the surges, and people getting vaccinated. I talked about the Pfizer vaccine and how in Israel we're finding that it's more effective than we thought it was. 97% at preventing you from getting COVID, but it also seems to be effective, in this case 94% effective, at preventing asymptomatic infections. In other words, you getting the virus and not knowing it. In that case, you could spread it to other people. Seems to be effective at stopping that as well, but we need more information. And then we talked about Germany and Italy, and there's other nations as well that are starting to shut things down because they opened up a little too robustly or a little too early, or opened up the way a lot of experts thought they should, but it caused an increase in cases and they're having to shut back down again. And we had talked about kind of early on, months ago, about the accordion effect of these openings and closings, that's exactly what's going to happen. You can open a little bit. If cases go up, you shut down a little bit. Then open a little bit more, then shut down a little bit more. And that's just the nature of the virus and us and how we interact between the two. And so something to keep an eye on. But overall, again, don't forget this weekend, daylight saving time. So you need to spring forward. This is the one none of us like because you lose an hour time. So when you go to bed at 10 o'clock tomorrow night, Saturday night, set the clock for 11 o'clock because that's what it's going to be like the next morning. Daylight savings time happens the middle of the night. You're going to feel tired. So a couple of things you can do is, start getting to bed early tonight, early tomorrow night, 20 minutes early each night. Try to get to bed as early as you can on Saturday. Sleep in Sunday, get sunlight on Sunday so it helps you wake up. Realize that you're probably going to be grumpy, your kids are going to be grumpy, everybody's going to be a little bit grumpy, especially come Monday. So we'll certainly talk about that when I'm with an expert on Monday. We'll be doing the same thing, but with him. So the other thing we're going to do on Monday, just so you know, is we're going to talk about sleep and answer your sleep questions. So if you have sleep questions in particular, please join us and give us those questions as well, because I'll have that expert with me. And he's fantastic and a very large knowledge base about sleep in general and things you can do to help you, not just in regular sleep time, but now during the pandemic when a lot of us are having issues sleeping. But thank you very much. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And like I always say, I hope that you stay as happy and as healthy as you possibly can, not just you, but your family, your loved ones, and your community. Thanks a lot.
Are you a fan of our videos? Be sure to subscribe to Worldwide Campus News and Entertainment. Then ring the bell to see all notifications about the new videos and the latest video.